digressed from mulch piles to plants that touch you. We're going to get started with our February meeting. Welcome, everybody. We have had 5 new members since our last meeting, which was on January 12th, and that puts us at our 140 members currently in our chapter. We try and cover this every month. I'm Jessie. Susan is on with us. She's our secretary and webmaster. Denise is our treasurer, keeping our money in order. We have our membership chair, Judy, who has an email on there now. So any new members are going to be receiving emails from Judy starting tomorrow. And Marilyn and Rick are with us. They are board members. We are still looking for homeowners advising committee chair and a community projects committee chair. If you're interested in volunteering your time, we would love it. All the sorts of ways that you can reach out to us or get information from us. Our website, our YouTube channel has our monthly meetings recorded. Check those out. We've had lots of great presenters and speakers. Instagram, not much going on there, but if you would like to post stuff on there from us, reach out. We can figure that out. Our new members, we'd like to say where they're from so that you guys can get together and do great stuff in your towns and townships maybe. My guess is that the person that joined us from New Jersey will end up being relocated to a chapter because there are several New Jersey chapter seedlings. So I'm thinking this might be a temporary thing, but welcome. If you did get to come with us tonight, anybody's welcome to our meetings. You don't have to be a member to attend meetings. Our meeting invitation goes out to over 600 people. So Gwynedd, Wayne, Philadelphia, and Rofo have joined us. We're going to jump right into the thought of the month. We're fortunate enough to have Christopher with us again tonight, and he is going to share some information about his living landscape function calculator. I'm going to stop sharing so that Christopher can share and talk to us about this website.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christopher. Let me share screen. Share. So this is, can I back up to the home screen? There we go. So I'll leave us on the home screen for a moment to give you some background as to how all this started. I fell in love with native plants like everybody else when I read Bringing Nature Home. I was fortunate enough when I was doing some undergrad study in 2010 to have an instructor in Reading, and I did a 1 semester class with her, and she pulled this book out, which had just recently come out, and said, I know Doug Talleman. We can connect you with him and do this class. So I spent a semester studying that book and became convinced this was the way to change the world. I went to Temple University here in Philly, had the opportunity to meet Doug. He came and lectured several times. He has become a friend and mentor to me. And as I'm sure most of you, is he your inspiration? In 2015, and I apologize, this is backwards. I didn't think to print this differently. They came up with the living landscape. And as much as I loved the book itself, I was fascinated with the tables in the back, which any of you who've looked at this book, you may remember that's kind of what it looks like. Doug and Rick Dark came up with this idea of telling us about the ecological functions and the landscape functions of various plants. There's about 500 listed here in the Mid-Atlantic chart. Doug later told me that when they were writing the book, Timber Press approached them about the idea of doing this, and they said no on several occasions. They did not want to get tied up in doing this silly chart. So it's his least favorite part of the book, but it's my favorite part of the book. So they did end up doing it. They refused to do them for the rest of the country. Timber Press hired other people to do the other 5 tables. So the Living Landscape regular first edition has tables for all parts of the country. So I was fascinated with this, and I wanted to know how I could put it online and make it available to everybody. And let me see if I can open this without ruining our screen. Here, will this work? Yes. So I persisted with working with Doug, and he convinced Timber Press to give me the data that created the charts in the book. And what we did was anywhere they had a symbol, we put a 1. We originally wanted to do something between 1.0 and 10.0 and give them a scale, but that got too complicated. So we created this. And then about 5 years later, when I raised the funds and got a web developer, we created this website. And this has been online now for about 2 years. As you can see in the upper corner, it is emudata.org. It is free. You can make a donation if you'd like. That would help me out because I pay for this website. And the idea here is the tables in the back of that book are now available as a database. And we'll give you an example. So when you land, there's a variety of things here you can read about. Most all of this is quoted from Doug and other sources. Here's our friend at the bottom. We'll do his video in a minute. You can click right here. It says search our ecological function and landscape function database. When you do that, you now have a map of the entire country. And you can click on whatever region you're in, since I know Wild Ones is nationwide. And there's a couple of different ways to search this. I originally had I had the Pro Search originally. And my oldest daughter, who is my advisor on all things digital, said, "Dad, this is too slow. I'm a busy mom. If my kids want pollinator plants, it's got to be 5 minutes or less." So we came up with the Quick Search. So if you click on Mid-Atlantic Quick Search, you get this. You can pick from whatever category of plant you like, or multiples. You have sun, shade, full sun, part shade, shade, and I think full shade on the corner that we can't see. So when you click on this, if you click on trees, full sun, you can see this chart at the bottom changing. What you immediately get is a list of plants rated by their ecological function score and their landscape function score. These are all natives. And the advantage of this is if you are doing a planting and you're trying to decide what tree to use or what herbaceous plants to use, you might not have room for everything, but this way you can pick which plants have the highest ecological function score. And there's nothing wrong with the landscape function score either. Those are ratings, those categories are how many seasons it flowers in and other functions, which are also can be important. And I'm trained as a landscape architect, so sometimes we want to balance appearance and flowering against ecological function. So you can do that with this. This allows you to search anywhere in the country, any category of plant by various different search functions, and you immediately get a list. So let's turn off herbaceous plants, look at shrubs. So here we look and you can see right away our Cornus samosum, silky dogwood, has the highest score. Gray dogwood, Viburnum acerifolium, Viburnum dentatum, landscape foreign function score. So that gives you a way to search for plants. Maybe you say, oh, what shrub should I put in? You can run this through. Here's your top shrubs to pick from. If you want to add something to a garden, if you're doing a whole design from scratch, again, you can pick each category and figure out what you need. And you can also print these, as I recall. Yep, you can print, Excel, CSV, or just copy. And we also have some definitions down here. And again, this is all drawn from Doug. I want to give him full credit. Doug and Rick Dark and Timber Press graciously allowed us to use this for free. I am a 501c3 nonprofit, which we created so that there's no, that way Timber Press didn't mind kind of donating this content. So you can read this. The eco score is based on how many categories it excels in specific functions. Landscape score is based more on the aesthetics or the ornamental functions. So this has a couple of drawbacks. One is that we have no non-natives in here. And I do think we should have both. Even Doug reluctantly agrees, for comparison's sake, we should have that. We also would like to develop some more categories. There's only 20 at this point. We'd like more than that, but that's the next phase. So let me see if I can go back to page 1. Oh, let's go back one more. So when I put this together, I had met up with Doug at a function, and I said, Doug, I want a video to introduce the website. And he said, right now? And I said, yes, right now. And see, this will play.
Chris Sohnly has created
There we go.
a function calculator, a plant function calculator that will allow practitioners to evaluate the ecological functions that particular plants perform. This is extremely valuable because plants vary tremendously in their contributions to the ecological landscape. We've got to promote the plants that are highly important in terms of what they're contributing. If there's a simple means of calculating and estimating the ecological value of a particular plant, it will be enormously helpful to the people buying their plants or the people who you're trying to convince to plant these plants. So I totally support it, and I hope that you guys promote it.
Thank you, Doug. So there you have it. I encourage everybody to look at this website for themselves. At this point, I think I'll maybe take a few questions. And then if you want, I can give you a little bit more background on the long journey to create this website. How's that sound?
Yeah, Christopher. So we've got a couple questions already.
Good.
One is, where is it? Does it link to pictures when you?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not link to pictures. There are links. I believe if it works, the links go to Missouri Botanical. I think. I haven't tried that for a while, but I know that's what we were trying to build in.
Missouri Botanical, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Missouri Botanical.
Okay. Audrey.
I'm sorry. Does everybody know, is somebody with Missouri Botanical Garden website? So the best two searches out there for any plant, I think, are Missouri Botanical or Lady Bird Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure we link to Missouri Botanical. I haven't tried it for a while.
Okay.
I believe that was the intention.
That's good. And also a Google search, usually those are the top two that come up when you search a native plant. As another category, Audrey had recommended edibles, human edible natives, and
yes,
that would be, a great search. I am curious as to why you want to include non-native plants.
For the basis of comparison. If you're trying to show someone that this particular shrub versus another shrub, has ecological function. And even Doug, he and I have had a lot of conversations about this. Non-natives do have ecological functions. And they also have landscape function. So they wouldn't necessarily be a zero. They could be a negative if they're invasive. But if we're trying to just categorize them by these certain qualities, then for sake of comparison, it would be helpful to be able to say, well, yeah, you can have, your barberry, but it has, zero ecological function and it has a negative quantity, so invasive. So that's why we've discussed that. And some of the other categories that we'd like to add. So this one let me go back here and we'll go to Pro Search. This should give you all the categories. All right, it's not displaying quite the way I wanted it to display. So we do have pollinator source and nectar source. And those have been developed more lately. Like this was originally 2015. So now we know a lot more about specialized pollinators and generalized pollinators. And Doug pointed out too that there are specialized caterpillars and generalist caterpillars. Like for example, the monarchs, they only eat 2 or 3 different plants. So that would now probably need several more categories at this point. The other thing that Doug would like that this does not have is it does not talk about plant families or plant communities, because that's really the best way for a plant to have full ecological function is if they were in a plant community. So the next iteration of this, if I can raise another few $1,000s someday, would be if you would go in and inquire about a plant, it would say, this plant is part of this plant community. Do you want to know more about plant communities? That's the next thing that Doug would like to see in here.
So like a whole listing of a grouping of plants to include all of the layers as a community. Is that what that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I have a couple more questions that are rolling in. Is the highest score a 9, or what is the scale that we're working on?
Everything, if you look in the easiest way to translate it, I guess, would be if you're familiar with the book, and if you haven't bought it, don't buy it because it's very expensive, but get it out of the library and take a good look at it. They just had a symbol for each thing. So it has, depending on its value, it has cover for wildlife, nest sites for birds, pollen and or nectar producer, food for birds, food for mammals, food for caterpillars. So I think there may be 1 or 2 things that come up as a 10, probably the oaks. We can take a look and see.
So it's getting its score based on the amount of categories that it fills on your 0 or 1 reference point based on the symbols from the book.
Right.
Gotcha. While we're looking at that, somebody also asks, are all of the plants listed straight species? You're not including like cultivars or nativars?
These are all straight species.
Excellent.
Yeah. And this is all, so the Mid-Atlantic table is based on Doug's research and Rick Dark's research, and the other 5 were done by other researchers. And some of those are not quite as complete. Timber Press kind of compressed them a little bit. So if you're working outside of our region, I don't think they don't all have 20 categories. So that's another drawback. But I think, yes, I think the highest we get is a 9.
Excellent. So I can see your point to including a few non-natives strictly as an example to show people, like, why would you even pick this when you have this other great native option that fulfills so many more roles? That's the only thing that's coming to mind as to why I would include any non-natives.
It's for sake of comparison. If you
Right.
And it depends on the audience as well. This is another thing that we've talked about. If you're trying to sell this to landscape architects or landscape designers, they have no idea. So they're going to look at some of these plants and not even know what they are. So at least if they had their familiar plants that they're used to using, then they could do a comparison.
And in reference to that, look how much better I could do with this. Okay, I do like that. That's a good selling point. Rick says that he likes that if you click the details, you can see what makes up the score. So that would probably be a listing of the symbols that were included in the back of the book, right?
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
There we are. Thank you. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
I
So
haven't been on the website for a while.
no, that's really
Um,
great.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time on this, and I will say if anybody, if you work with this and you find different things that maybe anything that doesn't work or any ideas that you have, let me know. I think you can get me through the email on this website. And we are delighted to have this link to any organization you're working with. One of the greatest emails I got was from a woman who was working with her daughter in Girl Scouts. And her daughter had found this website and had found a couple others and was creating a pollinator garden. So how cool is that?
That's wonderful.
Um,
Yeah, I can see that this would be very helpful, especially to those who are new to trying to learn about native plants, because it's covering all the big hitters and it's easy to understand. So yeah, this is really great.
I use it myself when I'm starting a design, just to remind me of, okay, what are the top shrubs? You know, what just comes up, you know, because it's funny how you forget certain things that are, you know, you get used to using certain plants and you sort of forget some other ones. So it's very useful for that. I use it that way. It's pretty flexible. It's pretty reliable. So if we've covered the questions, I want to give you just a little bit more background on where this came from. So in botany, a few years back, maybe going back almost 20 years now, they began to develop something that was originally called the Plant Stewardship Index, or you might have heard of it as the conservation coefficient. And I actually pulled up the definition so that I would have it. And so in botany, they developed what they call the FQA, the Floristic Quality Assessment. This was the inspiration for me creating these tables. So anyone who's not familiar with this, if you really want to be a plant geek, you want to look at the FQA. This was developed by botanists to help them rate a natural, I'll quote right from the site, natural community's condition or quality. Now, they developed what they call the conservation coefficient, but that is based on how a plant relates to its natural setting. And when I was in school, there were some of our landscape architects who were using this to give a score to their designed plantings. And it doesn't work the same way. The conservation coefficient refers to how a plant responds to its site. And I think I have that one in this folder. Wait. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. I'm not navigating very well. Give me a moment. So if you really want to get into the weeds, this is the write-up on the FQA. But the conservation coefficient relates to how a plant is in its natural setting. And this was being used by people to talk about designed plantings. And I started doing some research. I went back to my botanist friends and my horticulture friends. They all said, no, you shouldn't use that for a designed setting. Nothing wrong with being aware of the conservation coefficient and trying to use that for plants. If you're doing particularly an ecological restoration, probably some of you out there who've done restorations have probably familiar with the conservation coefficient. But for me as a designer, it's a little bit different. So I was asking around to develop a way to say, well, what about when I go to a nursery and I'm buying plants, how do I know what has the most value? So that was why we developed the Living Landscape Function Calculator. So anybody who's familiar with this, or you want to get some more background on the restoration side of it or the botanical side of it, this is some really good reading and something that you might want to check out. And I guess so that we're recording this, so you guys can all get to this website and look this up. Okay. So I will close that for now. I don't want to, excuse me, I don't want to be too much of a plant geek.
I don't think that's a thing.
Okay. I don't want anybody's head to eyes roll back in your head, because I can talk about this for hours. Excuse me. So if there aren't any other questions, I don't really have a lot else to say. I just invite all of you to look at the website and use it. If you're familiar with the living landscape, it'll be pretty easy for you to work with. And this is a 501c3. I've had donations that have gotten us this far. I've put in probably way too much of my own money and my own time to make this happen, but here it is for all of you to use. So I hope you enjoy it. And I just want to thank Doug Talamay, Rick Dark, and Timber Press that have been kind enough to share this with us, and all the researchers. When we went to the website, we actually had to look up all the other people who donated, put the research in, and every one of them was willing to contribute to the website. So that's really fabulous. So I just want to thank all of them for the work they do. Any other questions?
I don't see any questions, Christopher. Everybody's just saying thank you so much. It's such a great resource. And I think I scrolled up here. Becky thinks that her nature club is going to love this. So not only Girl Scouts, but nature clubbers will be able to do this now also. So that's excellent.
All right.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay, I will sign off here.
All right, guys, let me get back to my screen. Oh, I did just think of a question. What is the EMU data? What does that stand for?
That stands for Ecological Metrics Unlimited.
Okay.
I had to form a nonprofit to get this started. And I actually found a wonderful organization here in Philly who acts as an umbrella nonprofit and allowed me to start it with their cooperation. But I had to give it a name. And so I wanted to have something that really spoke to the mission. So it's the Ecological Metrics Unlimited. We're starting with this database. There are other metric systems out there that we could also use, but I'll save that for another time. So EMU is short for Ecological Metrics Unlimited, or EMU, which is my intention that it's easier to remember.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, guys. Next up, I think, yes. So our financial report, we gave a $100 donation to Wintergreen for their program last month. Thank you to them and the good work that they're doing. A call out for, if you would like to have anything contributed to our newsletter, send content to our secretary, Susan, and she will include it in our newsletter. And that could be things like some expertise that you have, some kind of question and answer that you would like. We're open to suggestions, but our newsletter is already amazing, and Susan's doing that 95% on her own. So if there are things that you think that lots of people would benefit from seeing in the newsletter, reach out to Susan. So Marc was going to join us tonight to talk about the appendix, native trees for Southeastern PA. That is the end of his last talk that he gave us on native trees for Pennsylvania. He's unable to make it tonight. He has some family things that he's dealing with, but he was gracious and kind enough to let us use the information from his website and the slides that he has prepared. So I want to go through that with everybody, and have, some discussion or some ideas. I think this fits really well with Christopher's talk because Marc has made this appendix based on his county specific. So we're talking very ecoregion specific native trees, and he talks about the benefits of each of them. I pulled out a couple of slides from his presentation just to go over a couple of highlights. All native organisms are created equal. Every native plant supports wildlife in some way. So this, I come across this discussion a lot, especially on like Facebook groups about native plants or just generalized gardening plants, when people will be like, oh, I needed to take the milkweed beetles off of the milkweed because my monarchs weren't getting to the milkweed. And they weren't appreciating the fact that milkweed supports a lot more than just monarchs. An entire community of organisms is dependent on that plant. And when we ascribe a certain priority over one organism or another, it's not fair to them. And somebody pointed out that it's like, pretty privilege. Like monarchs get to be there because they're so pretty and eye-catching, and they'll pick off milkweed beetles because they're not as pretty in their eyes, maybe. So it's just something I want us all to think about, that as long as it's a native organism that is benefiting from the native plants, then we should live and let live. If it's a non-native or an invasive that is disrupting that community, then maybe we step in. But it's something to think about. He also points out trees do best in naturalistic plant communities. So again, to Christopher's plant community idea, for the various reasons that he has listed there, and thinking about planting for the long term, thinking about size and how the community is going to change over time because of the different conditions that are created just by the plants themselves, making the shade different and the moisture absorption different and all of those things. Marc talks about what Southeast PA looks like now, based on lots of history from not only indigenous peoples, but early settlers and how they changed the land. So he lists out great research-driven information on the mature trees, what you can expect statewide, introduced pests and diseases by humans and the damage that they've done on different trees. And he lists the Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program as a resource for you to look at when you're trying to put together plant communities based on historical data of what was here before we were. So 135 species of trees are native to Pennsylvania and 65 non-native trees as of 2005. So I don't know if or when the data gets updated, how much different that's going to be. He gives us some good tips about planting 2 or more of each species for best cross-pollination. 1 male and female dioecious trees for fruit, diverse species to hedge against diseases, pests, and climate change. And while his list is specific to Montgomery County, so his eco-region specific county level is Montgomery County, which is fairly in the middle of all of our chapter. He says that native trees that tolerate 1 or 2 zones warmer might do better with climate change as we are getting warmer temperatures and more extreme moisture conditions, both wetter and drier for different periods of time. So it's something to keep in mind. Because I think, as we all know, as we're learning more and more about native plants, you'll meet people who are just barely touching their toes into the topic and think that a native plant, as long as it's native somewhere in the United States, is good enough. And then there are people who are going down to their county level specific native plant. So it's quite the spectrum. There are different databases. The Audubon Native Plant Database, which is also, I think, Christopher, part of Doug Tallamy research. So that also has a functionality, species supporting number to it. And so that he's explaining how he came up with the trees we're going to talk about tonight, that he put in his zip code, Montgomery County, the best results, 63 trees came up. He removed woodies that were primarily shrubs or rarities, like things that were hard to find, ash and hemlock, and then he added a few others. He grouped them by genus, and he, on his property, has more than 60 species of native trees. And that is on a little over, I think he has 4.5 acres that he's working on. So I know I have 1 acre and I haven't tallied up my species, but I have a lot of species. So don't think that you have to have 20 acres to put in 60 trees. You can do a lot with a little space. Most excitingly, there are so many fun pictures in his slides, and the wildlife photos are from his property. So that's always a highlight. He starts with a few lists of trees that I like. He has evergreens first. I need to try and hide this banner because I can't see past it. Sorry. I'm trying to move this banner and it just doesn't want to move for me. So American holly, eastern red cedar, shortleaf pine, red pine, pitch pine, eastern white pine, Virginia pine, and eastern hemlock are all native evergreen trees to Montgomery County. If you guys are super excited about sharing anything about the trees that do come up, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a story or something exciting to share about anything that comes up. This can definitely be a discussion. It doesn't have to be me leading us through every one of these slides. For fast-growing trees really come in handy, especially if you're thinking about succession and what you can put in that's going to provide you some quick shade while you're establishing some other slower growing species. So I like to throw these in spaces when I want some quicker impact. And a lot of times these are things that will volunteer at a site because they're early succession species. Black cherries, I get a lot of the birds like to donate those.
Hey,
I just
Jess.
have a question about, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry about
I
that.
just had a question about evergreen trees. I do a lot of hiking in the Chester County area on a lot of our state parks, and I'm just noticing more and more that there's so few evergreen trees present. It's just a lot of hardwoods. Is that native to our area? Did something happen where we lost our evergreen trees? You know, I think I have 2 on this property of my own that were planted by the developers when they developed. But I don't see a lot of evergreen in Chester County.
I think it's a successional thing. Evergreens, pines, and cedars are some of the first trees to colonize. If you think about agricultural fields, if you watch a field go into trees, if it's not mowed every year, you'll see those red cedars popping up. They're the very first. Pines are second or close to. One problem with pines is that the deer eat them, whereas they don't eat cedar quite as much. So I think getting white pines to colonize in an area with deer pressure, you probably are not going to have as many white pines as you would otherwise. So you may not be seeing as many young white pines because the deer just munch them down if the deer population is severe. Other than that, it's just a matter of, if you look up succession, tree succession in, Pennsylvania or wherever, it's a successional thing, because evergreens will give way to the quicker growing hardwoods like beech, and then the longer lived hardwoods like oak, and you just won't get them anymore. You might still get holly as understory. They do reseed American hollies. Even the cultivars, the varieties that we get from nurseries will cross-pollinate, and then the birds will sow them off in the wild. So you could get hollies still. But I think that could be one reason, is Chester County's woods, since so much land has been preserved down there, are maturing.
Yeah. What do you think it would be? Is it important to plant them on our properties and protect them and try to get them to mature? Or just let nature do its thing?
They're very helpful for the birds.
Yeah.
I would plant them. I would, if you have the ability to protect them, I would definitely plant them. I have a lot of deer browse too, and that's one of my biggest concerns. But if you can protect them while they're young and get a good start, I think you can have success.
And plant a lot, right? The more we have, the less pressure affects them.
Well, again, if you can protect them all, yeah, I'd plant as many as I could.
Okay.
There's a lot
I
of
put
seed
cages
missiles.
around mine and they're fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I had a
Until they
question
get
about-
above deer height.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have a question about, I think Rick mentioned something about the woolly adelgid on hemlocks. Is anybody planting hemlocks, young ones now?
No.
I have a few on my property and I've had adelgid in the past, but I'm considering I need to screen an area, and I just love hemlock so much, but I don't know if that's a losing cause at this point.
Is dormant oil an okay thing to use on hemlocks?
I think it would be. I'm not sure. Adelgid is very, you have to target it at a specific time of the year. And I think most dormant oils are used in the early spring, and I'm not sure what kind of results you can get with that, but it's something to look into for sure.
I don't think that it's very successful against adelgid, and I think conservation places, even like Mount Cuba, they basically say, if you're going to plant it, you're in for the long haul to forever be treating it. So you have to weigh the pros and cons of having the trees with treatment, and what that could be doing to the environment versus not having the trees. So it's a personalized decision you'll have to make, but they don't foresee just being able to have them without treatment.
Right. And I would not treat them, because you have to use a very harsh systemic chemical to treat them, and you're going to kill everything else that visits that
Right.
tree.
And it's not a one-time treatment. You're talking years.
That's right. That's
Yep.
correct.
So
But I think you might be able to deal with this the same way people are dealing with dogwood and anthracnose, which is not to treat trees, but to plant them in the very best situation for that tree and not make them struggle. Because I have to say, I have a hemlock that I've never done anything to. It's probably 30 feet high. And if it has gelded, I don't see them because they're way up there. But it's plenty healthy. It's much too large to spray, and I wouldn't anyway.
Right.
But it's in an ideal location for hemlock, north facing, cool. It's pretty hot down here for hemlocks, and that's a stressor. And so
they do like a lot of shade. They can.
If you plant them in the coolest, shadiest, dampest part of your property, you're definitely maximizing their ability to fight this sort of thing.
right. And you're right, Susan. At some point, if we give them enough time, they may develop resistance or have offspring that have resistance, and maybe that's the way that we overcome them instead of losing them all. Just like some ash end up having offspring that have resistance to borers. So that could be the way to go. Also put them in the best conditions, let them do their thing. Hopefully they have offspring that are more resistant years down the road.
Right. And I wouldn't plant a whole lot of them, because that'll be obviously a magnet. I would sneak one, and then another one, 500 feet away. Seriously, that's certainly one way to deal with pests, is don't call attention to what you got.
Right.
And maybe they won't find it.
I notice it sort of ebbs and flows based upon like the harshness of winter.
Okay.
If I have a really cold winter, I have less of an issue with it in the spring.
Does last week count then?
It does.
Good, good.
And that
'cause we
week
had-
before Christmas counted as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, excellent. So if we just put up with 2 of those a year,
Yep.
all right, I like it.
Excellent, guys. Excellent. Okay, so we were at fast growing. Hopefully you get to take a look at that.
I have a question about that list.
Yeah,
There's a black locust. I've heard so many people say, get rid of your black locust, and can someone weigh in on that?
I like mine. It's
like
super
mine.
fast growing. Some people I think that it's a weedy tree because I think they think a lot of these early successional trees are weedy because they pop up not necessarily where you want them. Some people don't find value in things that they don't have to pay for, so volunteers aren't their favorite thing. But it apparently each of these trees will be, there's a slide specific to each tree. And I think I remember the slide for the black locust saying that it had weak wood, which again, I think a lot of early successional trees do have weak wood because they grow so quickly. So that could be why people are saying, get rid of it because they drop limbs at unexpected times and things.
I think the Missouri, the website that was mentioned before about the Missouri, whatever, it said that it was invasive, and maybe it is out there, but
Right.
it's just fast. I'm thinking that the problem is that it's fast growing and a lot of them show up.
Yeah, so I agree, Marilyn. I was surprised when this tree showed up on this list because I've read different reports that it is invasive.
Mhm.
So I wasn't certain that it was native to our area, but that goes back to, looking at your source. Where are they saying it's invasive to?
Right.
And are they using the term appropriately? And I think I trust Mark and his research, so I don't doubt that this tree belongs on this native list for sure.
Okay, I'm
Well,
gonna
how
keep
about
mine.
Instead of invasive, it might be that they mean it's aggressive.
That's what I'm
Because
wondering.
Locusts
Yeah.
do sprout from their roots, and if you have a locust in a bed, you're not going to like it. If it's off in your woods, you're probably going to be fine with it because it's not dropping limbs all over your lawn, and it's not doing other obnoxious things. And if it wants to grow in a whole huge clump like sassafras and just expand, well, why not?
Right, exactly. Small trees for showy flowers. I think this is a great list to show people for their landscaping purposes when they're looking for a pretty tree. I can't read what the title is.
Trees for
I'm
wet
sorry,
spots.
could you go back to that other slide? I didn't get a picture of it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Oh, that's
This is
okay.
all on Mark's website, I'm pretty sure.
It is on his website,
Uh-huh.
and again, I'm a little bit flying through the lists because each tree is covered in its own slide, and I want you guys to be able to see all these great pictures of the wildlife that he's gotten on them, and he
Go ahead,
lists
Scott.
some great characteristics and things. Trees
Thanks,
for
Scott.
wet spots. I don't know about you, but I know Susan, you won't agree. Most of my property is moist. Susan has mostly
that's fine.
dry, so
Yeah.
all of these trees are my friends. Trees for dry spots.
That's me,
That's you.
right?
Susan, do you have Mark's website that you could put in the chat?
Oh, I'll find it. Yeah, and it'll also
Okay.
be in the newsletter. Sure,
And it was on the beginning slide.
Okay.
I'll find
If
it,
we need
Jesse.
to
I'll
go
put it in
back
the
to
chat.
that, then yeah, that'll be great. Deer resistant trees. Susan needs this list also.
Yep, I know them all. Actually, I disagree with common hackberry and pines, state pines.
You have
And-
exceptionally hungry deer too.
I do. I've got the worst of the deer. If trees live over here, they are deer resistant.
Mhm.
It also, the size of the tree has a lot to do with it. I put in a 12-foot river birch, not myself, because it was too big, and it's fine. But if I had a river birch seedling, I would have to cage it.
Right.
Oh, and fringe tree, give it up. Fringe tree, they eat them.
Yeah.
They're like candy. Yep.
So
sorry.
if you see these notes, it say deer often eat the energy-filled buds and immature fruit of resilient species whose mature leaves they do not prefer. So that speaks to your size issue too. If they can't get to it because it's older, they're not going to eat it.
Right, your size issue and also your flowering issue. I've had trees strip a fothergilla of all of its buds in the winter.
Oh,
Talk about discouraging.
That
So
is
the
so sad.
shrub is fine. The shrub came back, but I didn't get flower one. So
right.
it also depends on what you want your tree to do. If you're planting a fringe tree for flowers, you'll have a cage around that fringe tree until it's 10 feet tall.
Right. Keystone species. So all native plants provide some benefits to wildlife, whether or not they're keystone plants. The definition keystone varies for ecosystem caterpillars, pollinators, birds, but they are just disproportionately important in their landscapes. So now we're on to specific species, and he breaks this down by species and then, or I should say genus, and then those species that are native to the county. So Acer's the most common, hosts 275 caterpillars. Known for fall color syrup from sap of several species. And then these are the ones that he listed. I know that a lot of people don't like the box elder. That's another tree that people say is weedy because it moves in, it's fast growing. But I like them. They fill little niches. You can kind of chop it down and it sprouts back up more bushy like.
True that.
I think they fill a space nicely. Serviceberry. See all these great pictures he gets great bird pictures. Hosts over 300 caterpillars. Known for its fall color, although I personally only have very young ones and they drop their leaves for me very early, so I don't get to appreciate the fall color very much. And I know that I also, because I have cedars, I do get some of the cedar apple rust, some years better than others. So we'll see how that plays out over the next couple decades.
Do you have any sense of sun or shade? If it works better in the sun?
I think they work in both areas. Ideally, if you have a woodland edge, that would be ideal. Morning sun, afternoon shade.
So here's the chart to answer just your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. He is on it. There are a couple of other species that I'm going to take it that are native outside of this range. I want to say Alleghaniensis, maybe. There's another species that I thought would be on this list and is not.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah. And he could have maybe just abbreviated it based on a lack of finding it in the trade, maybe.
Those berries
Aurelia?
are delicious. Definitely plant a service berry. So
Yeah.
good.
Aurelia. And oh, you know what also he might have done? He might have taken out, maybe the one I was thinking of is shrubbier, and he had mentioned that he took out shrubbier species. So I bet that's it, because there's another Aurelia species, the spikenard, that he probably didn't list here because it's a shorter, shrubbier species. So he has it listed as Hercules Club. I think I know this is Devil's Walking Stick, or that might be the other species I was thinking of, but either way, these are fantastic. I just would not want to be falling down a hill and try and reach for this to stop my descent. Pawpaw. Oh, I don't think he has a picture on here. I just saw on a different site, I was very excited. It showed the difference on a pawpaw in winter of the flower bud and a leaf bud and how you could tell them apart. So I went out today and I was looking at my pawpaws are 6 years old now. So I was hoping they might fruit sometime this year. And I have some flower buds, just a couple, mostly leaf buds, but flower buds on the pawpaw in winter are covered in like a rusty little like hairiness that's different. You can distinctly tell the difference from the leaf buds. So I might get some flowers and maybe some fruit this year for the first time.
Yay.
Oh,
Yeah, that'll be neat. I didn't realize until whatever post I was on said the difference. So that was fun. Betula. Okay. Speaking of the deer eating river birch. This is another one that you'll see a lot of posts if we have a really hot summer of people wondering if their river birch is dying because they start dropping leaves early. But there are lots of birches available to us. I was pruning a young sweet birch a couple weeks ago, and when I snipped off the branches, it smelled so sweetly like root beer.
mhm.
It was really neat.
Is anybody having any issues with river birches and the spotted lanternflies besides me?
No,
It's unbelievable. The bark actually turns black in the fall with, from their sooty discharge to the point where, and a couple of the branches are out over my front walk, and then the walkway gets all that sooty crap all over. But they seem to be. I mean, I think I had one ailanthus tree on the property, which I got rid of, but they just seem to go after this river birch for whatever reason.
So it's going to vary from what I've been able to determine. The spotted lanternfly is going to find a different tree in everybody's area that they really like. At my place, it was maples and my non-native weeping willow that they just were on it constantly. And my maples for the first couple years that we had the spotted lanternfly, just like you described, Mark, that black nastiness. The last 2 years, not as big a problem. They really seem to have moved on, or we're finding a little more of a balance. But I've never, not treated those trees for it. So
On a
it's
side note, honeybees seem to go after that nectar, quote unquote nectar, in the late fall. Have you had any experience with that?
oh yeah. People will actually market some honey that's from the honeydew. Yeah. It's an interesting honey. Penn State did a survey that you could send in your honey to see how much of it was, how much honeydew was in it. And there were, some honeys that were just black. They had a
that's
lot
disgusting.
of honeydew in it. It's an interesting taste, and it's essentially like double bug filtered, passed through the spotted lanternfly, and then it passed through honeybees. So it's an interesting marketing angle some people took on it.
Yeah, I had a river birch that was pretty much destroyed by the lanternflies this year, and we pruned it way back. So I'm hoping this spring it's going to come back.
Good luck. I hope so. They may just move on to something different. Is this hornbeam?
The other thing about the river birch is that last summer's drought really did not do them any favors. So they could have been more weakened and more susceptible to damage by something like spotted lanternfly, whereas the summer before, when we had 60 odd inches of rain, they were happy little clams.
Yeah,
That's a very good point. Yeah. Okay, hornbeam. Hickory. Hickories I find are hard to find at nurseries because like the shagbark hickory that puts down a long taproot. So a lot of nurseries don't carry them.
Well, I have plenty of nuts if anybody needs some.
I think that's the way to try and do it for sure.
I'd definitely take you up on that.
Do they
Yeah,
actually sprout though? Do they sprout and survive?
I have a lot of babies. There's a lot of saplings out there, little ones that are starting to come up from my,
Oh,
I have about 6 or 7 on the property. They're huge. They didn't mast well, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, but last year we had a huge masting and the squirrels just went nuts. But there was lots of leftover. So I may not get any more. I may not get nuts for another year or so, but if I do, I'll collect them for you.
Okay.
and maybe the way to do it is to start them in a pot instead of trying to dig up the seedlings because of that taproot.
Yeah.
Right,
Start 'em
in
straight
one of
away.
those long tubelings, yeah.
Uh-huh, you're right, like the 2 foot or the 5 foot ones, yeah.
Yep. And then get them in
Just-
the ground in a protected spot, you know, soon after they've germinated, maybe.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the guy that sprouts the oaks with burnt aluminum cans or burnt steel cans?
No,
He opens up the top and it keeps them from the squirrels. And then as it grows through, it rusts. I'll find a link and I'll share it.
Oh, wow.
yeah, that's interesting.
That's a great technique.
Yeah, and you have to burn the cans because it takes the protective coating, the rusting coating off.
So
Interesting.
there are a couple of sources for hickories. I'll see if I can find them and send them to you. And I had trouble getting them to start. I have a friend of mine who's a magic nurseryman, and he taught me a technique. Very simply, you take a 5-gallon bucket, drill holes in the bottom, drill holes in the top, fill it most of the way with peat moss, and then layer your hickory nuts, cover them again another 2 or 3 inches, and then bury the entire can in the ground over the winter. And I had about 50 out of 100 hickory nuts that sprouted.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm ready to say I gave them all away, or I would offer you some more, but I didn't do it this winter because I just didn't get around to it, but I did find that worked.
Awesome.
I'll write that up for the newsletter. How's that?
That sounds
There's-
wonderful. I
there-
love it.
There's a native tree nursery near me here. I'm in Lidditz, and it's I think it's Landisville where he's located. It's Go Native Trees.
Yep.
He does a lot of hickories, and he uses special containers. I think they're about 2 feet deep, but they're very narrow. So
Right.
you have, yeah, and he said you have to plant them in like a 2-week window in the spring
Yeah.
would be ideal. But anyway, that's Go Native Trees. Pretty
Yeah,
neat.
they are a great resource for a lot of hard to find things. I
Yeah.
agree. Highly recommend them.
Yep.
Chestnuts. There's a chestnut society that was giving away chestnuts at the Lancaster Wildflower Festival last year. And I got some chestnuts and germinated them in those tubelings that you were just mentioning, the 2-foot long ones. And I gave them to a couple different people who had property that they could protect the chestnuts from. So there are still people that are germinating chestnuts in the hope that we can overcome this functionally extinct status.
Were they the hybrid chestnut that they were growing out at Penn State?
No, I believe these were straight American chestnuts.
Yeah, they had their spring meeting was up in Lebanon last year, which I got a chance to attend. And actually, Doug Talamy was there. He was one of their featured speakers. But they allowed everybody that attended. They gave them a little like 2 different bags of seeds, and they also did an auction for live trees. It was pretty neat. So got my hands on some seeds and I actually germinated them. So I have them planting. They're only about a foot tall, but we'll see.
Nice. Good
Well,
luck.
I think if you read up, they sprout and they grow into maybe 10 or 12 foot tall trees, and that's when they start to decline. So we can get them sprouted and we can get them to a certain age, but beyond that has been the challenge
Right.
from what I'm reading.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
I have a volunteer hackberry that I need to take down because it's growing out of my window well.
Oh,
But I've known I have to do, I just told my husband, I was like, you're gonna need to do that. I just can't even bring myself to do it. And I know it can't stay there. So he's just
Is
gonna,
Is it too big to pull up?
it's, yeah, I should,
Because-
when I first noticed it 3-4 years ago, maybe could have done that.
Yeah,
Now-
because if you're gonna cut it out anyway, Justin's pretty strong. If he can yank it out, put it in the ground and see what it does. And it's a great time of year to do it.
Yeah, I
Right,
don't
February
think
and
that he
March.
can pull this out, but I'll
sounds
have
good.
him try that first.
It's
Uh,
Have you gotten any berries from it yet, Jesse? Maybe you could collect the berries and start them from seed.
Yeah, I think that I will have more volunteers. I think the birds will bring me more, hopefully in a better place.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, but it is really neat. Even out of my window well. This is fringe tree, right? So I learned somewhere along the way that fringe tree is a relative of ash. So they have the potential to be susceptible to the emerald ash borer also.
That's too bad because they smell wonderful.
They're just amazing little
know.
shrubby trees.
I wish I had a huge one. There's a
Maybe the
huge
ash
one-
borer will be unhappy with our winter. Last week anyway, winter.
Our 1 week winter.
Yeah.
There's a really good size fringe tree on a shady walk at Sohnly in Villanova. It's just beautiful. I'm going to go see it this spring. I just have to see it in bloom.
Yes, it's a pretty narrow bloom window, unfortunately.
2 weeks at my daughter's in New York. That's not long. You're right. 2 weeks is not a long time.
And it seems that if it's 2 weeks of like rain, then there goes the show, unfortunately.
True. Yep.
Yeah.
They get soggy.
We had talked about anthracnose earlier, and if you're very intentional about siting dogwoods, you can have better luck avoiding anthracnose. That dogwood borer, he has a picture of there, so cool.
Probably not for the dogwood, but yes,
Yeah.
yes for the birds.
Yeah. Maybe it can give up a couple little twigs.
If that's
Oh,
all it
that
is,
chipmunk.
right?
I just love chipmunks. They're so cute.
too.
Ooh, you can have all mine. I don't like them. They
Love
eat
them,
everything.
but
They
I
eat
don't
everything.
I don't have mature enough trees to attract chipmunks yet. I've got squirrels, but not chipmunks. I think they like bigger trees.
Oh, I thought they liked the stuff on the ground.
Well, bigger trees make more stuff, right? So I think maybe
Oh.
that's like all my trees are babies. They're not trying to reproduce yet,
I
unfortunately.
don't know. I have them in New York in an urban garden with one tree on the property, and they're just all over the place.
Oh,
I always thought they were northern. I never even knew we had them much down here. I don't see
Yeah.
them here.
I see them run across the road here. Just I
Oh,
don't see
okay.
them in my yard.
Well, they must like some food that we don't have
Maybe.
here that New England has.
We all know there are more dogwood species, but he must have rated them for the shrubbiness, so they're not in there. Hawthorn. I planted 2 baby hawthorns, really excited about them, but they also get cedar hawthorn rust, which is like
Oh.
cedar apple rust.
Oh.
So they don't look great as babies. I don't know if they're going to be able to make it here or not, sadly.
How quickly do they grow? Because I'd like to put 2 in this spring.
I'm not sure.
Mhm.
I don't think that they were on the list of fast growing species. So these 2 babies are my first experience with them.
Okay, I'm going to give them a shot.
I think this resistance to leaf rust listed under the green hawthorn is what I should have looked for. I got 2 Washington hawthorns.
Right.
So maybe if they fail, I'm going to try and get the green hawthorns instead.
They are not on the fast growing list.
Great, thank you for confirming.
Okay.
Nine-
How far away do the cedars have to be to keep them from having that reaction?
It's a great question. Most of the research that I've come across says it's windborne, so it's not necessarily I mean, it has to be within wind distance, but that can be different, varying on what's in between the two things. And, you know, the way your wind predominantly blows, things like that. So it's not a straight answer as like if you have it 10 feet away, or, you know, it could be up to a mile if it's a straight shot and it's a windy time, you know.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's a rough
Yeah.
combination. But again, sometimes it's just an aesthetic thing. It doesn't necessarily do damage to the plants. Sometimes it's worse than that. So it depends on the species and lots of other conditions.
And I think if you find the galls and remove the galls before, like you can not necessarily treat the cedars for cedar rust, but you can remove the galls and it wouldn't be such an issue.
I guess I was thinking more on the other plant, like the service berries.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
But I'm saying because it's coming from these cedar rust galls.
Oh,
if
so if
this-
you remove the
if
galls,
you remove
then
the
it
galls,
won't-
then it doesn't necessarily spread.
right.
Yeah.
But I haven't found them on the cedars. Like I
Oh,
don't
I see them on mine all the
do
time.
you. So maybe I just have to pay more attention to that part of the life cycle. You're right. That's a good point.
They're high, mine are high. I see them like out. I've got tall cedars. I can see them out my bathroom window. They just happen to be at eye level.
Gotcha. Oh, it's good plucking level. Reach right out the window. Okay, persimmons.
I have volunteer persimmons that the deer eat every year down to the ground.
Really?
Mhm.
Do you know where the source is? Like you have a huge persimmon that's
Nope, never saw it before. I mean, I've got 2 that pop up every year in a very specific spot, and I think it's just the same 2 that grow back.
yeah.
But the deer eat them to the ground every winter, and every spring they pop back up.
Wow.
I think I'm gonna fence them. I think I'm gonna protect them this year because I'd like them to grow a little taller.
Right. Beach forming clonal colonies is always fun to see out when you're driving down the road, and the only color right now, you know, for the last 2 months has been the beaches with all its little babylings and all their dried up yellow leaves.
I love seeing beach with snow, like the yellow contrast in the winter when everything else is just brown.
Yeah, it's a nice color to the landscape.
I just love that it looks like they're looking back at you. They all have these eyeballs and they're all just watching us.
Yes, all their eyes are nice. Honey locust. Before I got into plants at all, really, we were on a letterbox adventure. My husband and I had come across this tree, had no idea what it was, but it looked so evil and menacing because of these gigantic thorns on it. We took pictures then to show the kids, like, look at this crazy evil tree we saw. Not knowing that, you know, it's not, it belongs there. It's not something that just like moved in to try and take over the world, but very menacing. So this is the witch hazel that is native to our area. We have a witch hazel that's native a little further west, which is Vernalis, and that is in full bloom right now. Smells yummy. It's so pretty. And on this warm day today, it was covered in honeybees.
Is it blooming flowers or is it blooming leaves or what's it blooming right now?
It's
Flowers.
so in that picture down here, this yellow, like squiggly thing, that's its
Yeah.
flowers. They look like
Wow.
little miniature fireworks all over it. It's so lovely.
Jesse, where did you find it? I haven't had a lot of luck finding Vernalis. Everybody has the Virginiana.
That's a great question. Where did I get it? Mine, I've had in the ground probably 5 or 6 years. I want to say that I got it from Octoraro.
Ooh.
I'm pretty sure I got it from Octoraro back then, like 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, right. Time to do another order.
Because they were small little, like just above a bare root, like they were tiny, and now they're 7 feet tall, maybe 6,
Oh
7
my
feet tall.
You know
They
what? That's
grew-
your wet soil.
Yeah,
That is your moist soil.
Yep.
Mhm. And mine
And-
are going to struggle.
that was one of those examples that I used. I planted it with mountain mint to try and protect them, so maybe the rabbits and things wouldn't find them.
Yeah.
I put red bud, pawpaws, and those witch hazels in that bed and covered it with mountain mint. So now all of the trees and things are far above the mountain mint, but they were protected in their little nursery
Nice.
stage by my mountain mint.
That's a
That
great
worked.
idea.
It worked well for that bed for sure. So I get volunteer hollies
Yes.
and they grow goofy. Like I've got one that's growing kind of horizontally, doesn't know it's supposed to be a tree. So that's interesting to me.
Is it in a lot of shade?
It's not, but it's underneath another tree, like a bird must have been on the branch of the other tree. So I
Yeah.
guess maybe it's not a super shady tree, but it must be reaching for light. And that's why it's like horizontal. It's weird.
Yeah. You can move it and prune it and it'll change. They're actually really easy to prune to shape, which is nice.
Yeah.
They are not easy to move though. I've moved hollies and been sorry that I did it.
I bet they probably put down a heck of a root. Now, his notes say
do.
they're rare in PA. I was surprised to see that since, I get volunteers, but
Well, I'm not sure what we have as Ilex opaca. Like one time I mentioned that to a landscaper and he said to me, oh, all of those, what are they called? Blue satyr. And, there are blue tinged and olive green tinged. He thinks, and I've seen some research too, that they cross-pollinate those flowers and that those are the seedlings we're seeing, that they may not be straight species.
Brandon at Edge of the Woods Nursery was saying that also, that hollies are promiscuous, that they
Yeah.
will cross-pollinate.
I think there's somebody at Penn State who's actually doing research on it. She's taking samples of these various seedlings and finding out what their parents are, if they have any of these, cultivar genes back in them. But
That
there's still habitat. They produce berries. The birds eat the berries. They're
Right.
evergreen shelter. I'm not seeing anything necessarily bad about that.
right.
When I removed all the invasives from my property, the only thing left in the understory right now is hollies. Like, so I'm
Oh,
trying to
that's
restore the
beautiful.
understory, but it's 90% hollies.
Wow.
Because
That's
it's the only
lovely.
thing that the deer don't eat, Susan.
Um,
And they're
they
very shade tolerant.
yeah, they don't eat mine. You're right. I've heard other people complain about deer eating, but they haven't eaten mine. Now I need to knock on some wood.
Right. Right. They're coming after your hollies next.
So they better not.
Oh, black walnut. I get a lot of volunteers of this also, the
Yes.
squirrels that I mentioned, but my neighbor has 2 beautiful big black walnuts. So I find them and then I get to play the fun game of, is this an ailanthus? Is this a black walnut? What is this baby?
Pull it out no matter what.
Well, easier said than done.
Oh,
Baby
yeah.
black walnuts are
Uh-huh.
vicious to try and get out.
They are,
Sure.
but they'll pop up everywhere. And I think they're way too prolific.
Most of the time it wants whatever the squirrels bring it right to the foundation of my house. So I have to
Mm.
get them out.
Mhm.
But yeah, if it were somewhere other than that, maybe I would let one go, but
Jesse, I think the buds are the way to tell the difference. And I can look that up and send it to you. Between the Allianthus and the black walnut.
right. There are various ways. They smell very different also.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Mhm.
But at that point, I'm figuring that out as I'm tugging it. So either way, they have to go when they're right at my foundation. But yeah, you can usually tell by the smell.
I'm
And
curious
the
about-
Allianthus can cause skin itches too if you take it out by hand,
Some people are sensitive, right?
right?
I'm curious about Mark's last bullet point on that slide, and that, like, I'd always heard that the black walnuts would kill plants underneath it.
Oh, so that's one of the most common questions I get from people. Like, give me a list of plants that will grow with a black walnut. It says, everything says that it won't grow with it. I was like, well, yeah, that's because you're trying to put non-native stuff with it, and then the juggalo might be an issue. But this allelopathy, a lot of plants have that, and we just don't know that that's the issue. Like, it goes back to that researching plant communities thing, I think. See what grows together historically and work off that versus, trying to put your barberry under your black walnut.
Force our will.
Mm-hmm. Only 9 caterpillars, but tons and tons of birds. And gin, right? This is how you make gin.
Yes.
That sounds like a Wild Ones service project. Make gin and hand it out at tabling events. Maybe we would get more volunteers then.
The birds are on mine all winter long, and it's the first thing I see when it warms up. I see, not necessarily bees, but I see flies and all sorts of insects on the upper branches.
Neat.
One of the conservancies, either Brandywine or Mount Cuba, I think, is having a native berries that produce liquor, like a tasting event.
Oh, fun.
I didn't put it in the newsletter because it involved liquor, but
Oh, put it in the
adult.
newsletter.
I've seen it. I've seen it
We're all
online.
adults here. I think that's a very important little blurb that should be in there.
I'll
It's
look
part
for
of
it.
foraging, isn't it?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
The best part about foraging.
Right.
Sweet gum, love them.
Hmm. They're beautiful.
Yeah, and even when they're tiny, they're beautiful because they're one of those trees that holds its characteristics from like the time it has 2 branches to the time it's like, 75 feet tall. So pretty. Definitely on the list of fast growing.
Mhm. Definitely on the
super
list
tall.
of deer snack.
So tall,
Yeah.
so straight. One of the easiest recognizable leaves for people who know 2 trees. This is one of the leaves they know.
Mhm.
But you're right, Susan. I've got a couple volunteers that appear and then disappear shortly afterwards because of the deer.
Yeah, I have to
Mhm.
cage them all.
Do you
Uh,
get volunteers or you plant them, Susan?
No, I have volunteers. I don't even know where the parent is. It's not anywhere that I know where it is, but every year. It may be a legacy seed bed too, because I used to have a tulip and it fell down.
No?
Well, I've got really shallow soil and I think it was either a windstorm or a lot of rain. It just the roots couldn't go anywhere. So even though it was very mature, it didn't have enough root structure to sustain itself. But those seeds might still be in the soil.
Gotcha.
I'm ever hopeful.
Did I miss one? What is this?
No, I think you're okay.
Magnolia.
Oh, okay.
Which one?
So
Oh, I want that moth in my yard so bad.
Prometheus, yeah.
well,
they're
I have
pretty.
found the
stunning.
cocoons in my yard, but never the moth.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
I found the caterpillar and the cocoons, but not the moth.
So I'd like to know which magnolia is heavily browsed by deer, because I have grandiflora and the deer have never touched it.
This does not tell us.
So
My sweet bay, they don't eat my sweet bay.
Yeah, I
magnolia.
had
Yeah,
seen
they
that,
don't eat mine
Marilyn.
either.
So I'm wondering why Mark put that there, because I've seen a lot of references to sweet bay being deer resistant.
Yeah, it is for me,
Me too.
Okay,
So
well, that's
have-
encouraging.
but
Maybe
not
in
for
his
Susan.
woods, it might-
Susan, everything eats Susan's.
Well, I
Right.
don't have a sweet bay yet. I've been a little hesitant because I don't want to spring for a nice big tree and have the deer.
Susan's
Challenge.
voracious deer.
Yeah.
Sweet bay grow really fairly quickly. If you get, because you can cage things, if you get something real small, it in the probably 4 or 5 years will be above deer browse.
Okay, that's encouraging.
Yeah, they
I-
and they're semi-evergreen, so they're really neat.
And the fragrance coming off the flowers in summer is not to be missed.
Oh, and you know what's even when the flower dries, they look like wooden flowers. It's
Yeah.
so cool.
Oh, is it the seed pod like grandiflora? It looks the same. Yeah, that's why
no,
I have grandiflora.
Yeah, the flower itself though dries really neatly, like
Oh,
on the tree. It remains
Oh.
on the tree, but the petals dry and they look like somebody carved them out of wood.
oh, I
Very
see
cool.
now. Grandiflora doesn't do that. I have a wet spot I just cleared a bunch of forsythia out of, and so it's available, and I'm thinking maybe a magnolia there. It's my only wet spot.
Nice. There's a
Yeah, I'm
One of
thrilled
the
to have a wet spot. Who knew?
yeah, right. One of the intersections by my house has a beautiful sweet bay that I think was a volunteer. I can't imagine somebody planted it there.
Oh,
But there's also volunteer Joe Pye there, so you know that it's wet. And
Hmm.
it's just really a neat little community that's there, like a remnant community, maybe.
that
I
sounds
planted
cool.
mine in my front yard, and my front yard is a fairly major road, but when it's like blooming, I go out there and sniff it, and I must look like the
Mhm.
big freak, like out front along the roadway sniffing his tree.
Rick, how much moisture do you have there?
It's actually not that moist, but it's also partially shaded, so it doesn't dry out quickly.
Okay. Okay.
Susan, I don't think it has to be that wet. I mean, mine are kind of near a stream, but more on a hillside.
Okay. I think it might do in this spot. It's deeper soil than anything I have anywhere else too, which I think makes a difference. If they can get their roots down a little bit.
Right.
Mine lived through last summer's drought, so I figured that's as tough of a condition as it's going to have.
That's a
Right.
sign. You're right.
Mine too, even those little whips that I put in made it.
Yeah.
Well, 2 out of the 4 made it. So, and they were literally just whips. So,
Mhm. Cool.
native apple.
Yeah, I didn't know we had a
Crab
crab apple. That's cool.
Mhm.
I
It's
like
really
one.
hard to tell if it's a native or not too. And I've had some experts saying they can't tell, but the birds they love it. They love
Yeah.
it.
I
And-
think that they might hybridize between each other too.
I think they might, yeah.
Yep.
And they're
We have
very easy to grow. They show up everywhere.
We have a crab apple, but no one seems to be interested in it until after winter, like after what's left of the little crab apples, like Mrs. Crabapple, of course. After the little crab apples have all frozen a little bit, then they'll eat them. It's right outside my office window. So sometimes I just sit there all day long and watch the birds.
I think the native crab apples have really small apples, like a
These are-
quarter to half an inch.
And
I
there's a
think.
color
Yeah.
difference too.
These are this big and they're the flowers, when it flowers in spring, our bees love it.
Yeah, that's true.
This is another one that sadly hybridizes with the
Yeah.
invasive, and then it's really hard to tell. The fruit looks the same from what I've been told. And the only place that I found the red mulberry for sale was not Collins. What's the other nursery? That's up gosh,
Chino's
Geno's.
in Newtown. Mhm.
Yep, they had red mulberry.
Mm. That's a good place. I like them. I wish they were
Yeah.
closer.
I like them too. So the invasive one is really hard to get rid of because it will sprout from the cut stump for years, and years.
Mhm.
George says bummer because he just cut one down.
But if you cut it, it's easy to just circle around with your saw or your pruners twice a year and whack, whack, whack.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
do that with everything, right?
Twice a year for 10 years, but yes.
Yeah.
You're going to be
It's easy to
whacking
get to.
something, you know, you're going to be there for some reason for the next X years. So just take your
Right.
pruners. My biggest problem is I forget my pruners and then I'm trying to,
No, we're
them
talking
off with
5
my
minutes a
hands.
year, right? Twice a year,
Yeah,
5 minutes. No
exactly.
big deal, right?
it's worth it. It's
That's
totally
right.
worth it.
That's right. Black gum. So I have heard people don't like this tree either, which is crazy to me because it will send up, like, it'll make a thicket. From
Mhm.
not my personal experience, but from what people have said, it's another easily recognizable tree, and with its horizontal branches, I can't imagine not wanting it, but I guess there are places where people maybe in a bed where they wanted just a lone tree.
The fall
Well, yeah.
color is beautiful too. It really
Right.
is.
Right.
And the birds love it.
Yeah, it's one of the best fall coloring trees I think there is, but
Right.
I've had issues with suckering on ours. Well, my wife has had issues with it. I don't mind it so much, but yeah, it's a
Mine
beautiful
haven't
tree.
suckered yet. I don't know why.
But the flowers are very inconspicuous on that, very tiny, and you can miss them if you're not really looking close. But the
Hmm.
bees and all kinds of insects love this.
This was one of the few trees that the rabbits took out for me, that I
Oh.
put in small ones and the rabbits got them.
Yeah, the deer actually browse on the suckers, which is a good thing.
Your wife
So you
paid those
say.
did well.
Yeah.
Hawthorn beam. This is not the one I was thinking of. I was thinking of hop tree.
They're very similar looking. Mine, the birds love it. It's the deer do not, as far as I know.
Ooh,
I mean, Susan's deer might, but mine don't. And,
we'll try it.
It's really a nice tree and it grows pretty fast and it still has its leaves on it now. The
Yeah,
leaves
I was
are
gonna
still
say, mine
there.
has leaves on it to this day.
Yep.
Right. They're just beginning to wither. They're brown, but I mean, they're still there.
Right. And it has a very compact shape to it. It doesn't get real rangy like.
Mine's getting pretty broad, but it's not unnice. It's a nice shape, but it is broader than the hornbeam. Hornbeam is straighter and the bark is different.
We should do a side by side at some point to tell those two apart. They're pretty close, I think. The pine, this one that does not tolerate shade and it doesn't like wet soils. Look at that caterpillar, white pine angle moth caterpillar that looks like the needles. That is so cool.
Where?
True.
Ha, it's in this picture right here. This is the caterpillar.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, isn't that so cool?
Caterpillar. My gosh.
Yeah. So when you're seeing birds hop around these evergreens in the winter, they could be picking off these caterpillars. So cool. Lots of pines. I put in a couple of eastern white pines that are growing very quickly. I like it. They're good for screening if you need to put in a screen that you want, fairly good sized in 5 or 6 years.
They are, and they're so graceful. The form and the branches, they're beautiful.
And the birds love, running in and out of them for cover.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm putting in a couple pitch pines this year for the first time. I've kind of been looking at them and they've got sort of a unique form.
They're kind of funky shaped.
Yeah.
They can, yeah.
I'm trying to put in like a mixed tree hedgerow along my property as sort of a fence row. And I think I'm tagging
would
them
be
in
fun.
as a point of interest.
Are they more sparse than the white pine? Like their branches are further apart, right?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine is still fairly young, but it is kind of, yeah.
They have a completely different growth habit too. You know what I mean? Eastern white pines get those kind of high up branches that go out horizontally.
Yeah,
Whereas I
almost
think the
radially.
pitch
Yeah.
pine is a much funkier habit.
Okay.
It has no habit, I think.
Right.
It does its own thing, each one.
Yeah.
The pitch pine's doing jazz hands with Rick there. That's
I saw that.
sycamore, love them.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Fortunate enough to get a volunteer sycamore the same time that my non-native Zelkova died. And it was just meant to be. That tree is just so pretty and it's growing so quickly. I love it so much.
They are fast growers. Yeah.
That's good
And-
to know. I just found my first freebie that just this past couple of months. It's sitting in my meadow.
And the deer don't eat them.
No.
Ooh, and if they don't eat them on my property, they will never eat them.
Does anybody know, does the non-native plane tree, can they hybridize?
Ooh, no
I
idea.
don't know. That's a good question. I have a plane tree also, but I don't know.
I'm not sure either.
They're not as pretty as the sycamore.
No, that yellow bark is just not as good.
Nah.
Poplar hosts a lot of caterpillars. I don't have any poplars.
No, me neither.
And I feel like if it likes moist, I should have one probably.
Do you all know about the native trees from Pennsylvania that they give you for free?
No.
Oh heavens,
what?
I'll have to get you all that
Who?
information.
Where?
I'm getting some quaking aspens from them this year. I mean, the order for this year is already closed, but it's 10,000, 10 million. I can't
Oh,
remember.
K10M, yes. Yes, we have K10M.
Yep, yep.
And, and it's a wonderful source for free trees, and they give you protective tubes and stakes, and it's all free, and it's just
Mhm.
amazing. It's
Yes.
they're wonderful. And
You
they're
and Audrey
babies.
started that. Mhm.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it
They're
was wonderful.
babies, but they do grow fast.
When do those trees come in, Susan? Do you know offhand?
April 16th is in my mind.
I volunteered to help you with the pickup on that if you need.
I think they
Maybe
need
it was
help
the-
too on the 14th if you're available.
Maybe
to
it was the
set it
14th.
up.
Rick, yeah, Rick, I do have you on the list. So
Okay.
when I get the email from Corey, I'll definitely let you know. Yeah,
To go
thank
back to sycamore for a second, George looked it up, and apparently the London plane tree, and I quote, this is from CanadianTreeTours.org, the London plane tree is in fact a hybrid between the Oriental sycamore and the North American sycamore.
Right,
I
so the
wonder why
question
they
is,
call it a London plane tree.
would it cross back? And it might.
Fascinating.
Mhm.
I think they started growing it because it didn't get the anthracnose. And so more people planted that because and the native sycamore got anthracnose pretty badly for a while.
Right. And I think that varies dependent again on moisture levels, on
Location,
lots of conditions. Yep. Yep.
yeah, right.
Prunus, one of the keystone species that hosts so many caterpillars. I get lots of volunteers of these too.
Me too.
There is an invasive sweet cherry, or it might not be labeled on the invasive list yet, but it's non-native, pretty prolific sweet cherry that sometimes I have to pull those out. But I let a lot of black cherries go, even though some people think that they're another weedy tree. They don't always have the best habit.
I think they were considered bad because they were poisonous to livestock. But if you don't have livestock roaming around your property, then they're okay because they're really good for our caterpillars.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Jesse, what's the invasive black cherry?
Sweet cherry.
Sweet cherry. How do you tell which is which, because I have tons of seedlings.
I have to Google it every time.
Okay, I'll look it
I
up.
can't tell you off the top of my head, but
I'll look it up.
the sweet cherry, the leaves are different. I think it's something in their serration, and I believe there's also like a glossiness difference.
I think
Yeah.
the flowers are different too.
Yeah, if you catch it at flowering. Most of mine are young, so they haven't flowered yet. So I have to go by leaf shape.
Okay, so the cherry that has the long plumes of blossoms in the spring, that's our native
Yeah.
Right.
black cherry,
We
right?
have a
Okay.
couple, we have a Virginia cherry and a black cherry, and I mean, they're all, one of them has droops, one of them has, well, you can see the pictures down there on the bottom. But yeah,
Pin
they're
cherry,
different
yeah.
ones.
Yeah,
I
that's what
didn't
we
know
always
that.
called it, was pin cherry. The really tiny ones, and the birds do love
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Right.
those, yeah, they're all really nice trees.
Mhm.
Yep.
They have pretty bark. That black
That
shiny
American plum
striped
is
bark.
pretty small. See the one on top says American plum? That one's,
Yeah, I've heard that.
but I think it's really a good tree for birds and things.
It's susceptible to the deer, unfortunately.
Of course it
also-
is.
It's also very shrubby, like at least in my experience, it's not a straight up singular trunk.
Yeah, it's
and
more of a
it
shrub, I
suckers a
would
lot.
say.
Yeah,
Rather than a tree.
but I love them. They're
It's
definitely.
it's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, did you have any luck with those?
They're still small. I have to protect them.
Okay.
That's how I know the deer eat them, because if they're not caged, yeah, they would eat them.
Here's the hop tree. We had, I think, brought this one up earlier. This hosts the zebra swallowtail. No, it doesn't. The
Giant swallowtail.
giant swallowtail. There it is. Oh, I'm acting like I need to remember it. It's on the screen. It hosts the giant swallowtail. Okay, on to oaks. Must be down the home stretch here. 18 species in Pennsylvania, and they hybridize. Hosts over 500 caterpillars. The red oak group puts out acorns every 2 years, the white oak group every year. And red oaks are more susceptible to the oak wilt. So most landscapers are recommending white oaks instead.
And the white oaks grow pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating how different the leaves are between species, but then also how different they can be on each tree.
And there's the chinkapin that we were trying to get acorns of.
I was just gonna say
That
that, yeah,
didn't
I'm still
work,
looking
yeah.
for those. That would be so nice to have these small oaks.
There's
I
also
found-
an invasive one too, isn't there? An invasive oak with the
The
overcap or something like that.
and there's like
Oh, I've seen that.
a sawtooth oak or something that the forest lands put out to feed wildlife when it's not even a native oak. Why they would do
Oh.
that, I don't know.
To attract deer,
Yeah,
right?
that's silly.
I found a relatively small oak at Gino's last year called the blackjack. It's supposed to get only 25 feet tall. I thought that was interesting.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, is that Marylandica?
Yes, right.
Yeah, yep.
Do you have one?
I do not have one, but I want one.
Oh, well,
So-
Gino's had them.
I'll have to check out Gino's, yeah.
Blackjack is in my woods waiting for spring.
So this is the red oak family. Last year I was at an event where one of the, I'm so bad with names, one of the tree care places that gives away trees at events often, they were giving away willow oaks.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was really great, yeah.
And you have wet soil, so you got one.
I didn't get one because they're a huge ass
Oh.
tree.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
and I didn't I didn't have the space that I wanted to. I do regret it. Now I want the dang thing. But I thought at the time, no, I can't put in a 75-foot tree.
You know what? This needs to be a newsletter article because the Brits have pollarded trees for generations, for centuries, as you know. They don't, they made the trunk, make it huge, but they don't let them get above 12 feet. They just whack them right off and use them as firewood or building wood or whatever because they have so little wood. So we could sustain, I want to research this more. We could sustain trees that would naturally be 75 or 100 feet tall at lower heights if we're just willing to do the requisite whacking.
Right. Yeah, and then the benefit is there. That's why I let a lot of my volunteer little oaks and maples go, because they're hosting things even when they're small. And when, it gets bigger than I want to allow it, I'll just, cut it off. And if it grows back or if it suffers or
Resprouts.
whatever, then yeah, we'll let it be at that. Otherwise, it was a
That is
volunteer.
that is a great theory. I really like that.
Yeah.
As opposed to just not letting them grow up at all. They're
Right.
going to host insects until they're, until, like you said, you have to take them out for size.
Right.
Why not? Why not let them do it?
Yep.
I like it.
Okay, we are at
Sumacs.
I love my sumacs.
I love them
So
too.
do the
and I
deer.
was surprised there's only one on here, but again, I wonder if it's just the tree
Probably
versus
five.
shrubs.
Yeah, Aromatica is smaller.
I don't, the Coppolina gets pretty big.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that was tree sized also.
Yeah.
It might not be
And
native.
The winged,
No, it's
I
native.
wonder if it's outside the range. Yeah.
I mean, to here, yeah.
Oh,
To
my.
Montgomery County, it might not
But
be
I
native
did
right
get
there.
it from the tree, Pennsylvania tree group.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So-
think maybe it may. So either it was taken out of the list for shrubby size or because it's not endemic. Is that the right word? To Montgomery County.
But it was on that group from the Pennsylvania trees that
Right.
Audrey got us in touch with.
Good.
So that's where I
Yeah.
got mine.
But I think that's statewide, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But either way, love them all. They're all wonderful, wonderful. Their fall color is magnificent.
Yep. But it's another one that I come across and I'm like, is that, Allianthus or is that sumac?
Yep, you got to look at it.
Is it covered in lanternflies or is it not covered in lanternflies?
That's one, identifying. I find a lot of grasshoppers on mine. Making other grasshoppers. Like they must find it a very romantic tree. And it is
Really?
like very tropical. Maybe they're like taking a little vacation. I think it's a coincidence, but also pretty reliable that I can go out there and get in people's business.
There's my
This is-
locust.
Yeah, the black locust. And they bloom really young too. Mine had only been in the ground like 4 years when it bloomed the first time.
Oh, cool. And those are those bright yellow blossoms too, right?
They're like droops. They like hang down
Oh,
in a bundle of flowers that
they
hang.
sound
Droops
pretty.
not the right word, but
It
they
looks like a pea. It looks like a pea, the partridge pea or something like that.
they are
Right,
in the
they're-
pea family. Yep.
They are.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that locust borer might be on goldenrod in that picture.
Oh, okay. Okay. No, that's not the locust
not the-
flower. Then.
Right, that's not the
It's
flower.
a white
That's not-
flower, right?
Oh, I see it in the middle picture. Okay.
It's fun when they're in bloom and you can go down the highway and see all of the trees in bloom at the same time, like because they tend to grow up along highways. So for a couple of weeks, you can see nice big blooms. And honey beekeepers like when locust is in bloom because it produces a lot of nectar. So bees make a lot of honey off of it. But a lot of times it tends to be the same time that they are in bloom, we get a rainy spell. So the honey ends up, or the nectar ends up getting washed out and they don't make much honey on it. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's interesting. Sassafras.
Salix.
Where am I?
Alex, it's willow.
You're on willow.
Willow. That's it. I was surprised that the black willow was the only one on this list. Again, it
I
must
think
be,
the other ones are more bushy.
yep, that must be
Okay.
it.
I
Oh,
think.
pussy willow. Yeah, pussy willow is not a real
Right.
tree.
Okay, there's sassafras.
Talk about fall color.
Oh my, yep.
I love these guys. I grew up with sassafras groves around the house, and I didn't know how lucky I was because it's really hard to start them.
Yep.
If you don't have them.
Go
They
Native
grow-
had some.
Don't they grow with under stolons, or they grow into a colony?
They do.
Right. So they're
Yeah.
impossible to transplant. So I used to go over to my mom's house where I grew up, and I would dig the babies at the edge, and there wouldn't be any root there. It would just, as far down as I could dig, it was nothing but something connected to the main root. So I never could transplant them. And then here, one day I was walking in the back of the woods and I saw sassies that are there.
Yep.
So you have them now.
I do have them now. Yep. And now that I've cleared out my backwoods of invasives, as Rick said, you find a lot of cool things. I do have a grove of sassafras back there.
That's great. Good
Yes,
for
I
you.
was pleased.
And-
Yeah.
Go Native had them at their fall sale, and they recommended waiting until spring to purchase and plant them. They
Oh,
said they do better when you plant them in spring.
Oh, so they
they're
must be
also fairly
physically living.
resilient. I know of a place that a bunch of them get mowed down like once a year, and then they regenerate pretty vigorously.
Okay, so they must have a good, strong root system established where it
And who
doesn't
knows,
bother
it could
them.
just be the one plant that put up all those suckers. I'm not sure.
Right, and there could be a mother tree around somewhere that does the photosynthesizing for the whole batch.
Right?
Nice of her to do that.
Yeah. It's a good mama. Basswood. This is a neat plant. It blooms in the summer. Not a lot of trees bloom, most are spring bloomers, but this one's a summer bloomer.
That does look cool. Moist. Everything wants moist soil. I don't have enough moist soil for all these trees. I'm so jealous.
I had one that kind of was knocked over when I bought the property, and it's, sprouted from just about every branch that was touching the ground. So I think they're pretty prolific.
Nice.
Oh, cool. Okay. Once you have them.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Disease resistant stock available of the elm. So this,
I'm afraid I have Siberian elm because I have something that a landscaper identified as elm, but he wasn't specific. So I have to learn. I know one of them, the leaf is rough, and one of them, the leaf is smooth, and I have to look it up and write it down because I don't remember.
right. I think this is our last one. I would like to try this one. It seems really interesting to me.
Well, you've got wet soil.
But it only hosts 3 caterpillars.
Yeah.
I've heard some other positive things about it, though. I can't remember what it was. Maybe that it calms your toothache.
Yeah.
There was something else about this tree because I was unfamiliar with it.
But I wonder what tree you need to grow to combat the wounds that this tree will inflict. If
I
you
was
break the
thinking that
branch.
myself. I was like,
Like-
you better like it because you ain't taking it out of the ground. once
That's
it's
right.
up.
Willow
It's
bark.
yours.
Right? Willow bark tea for pain.
Oh my gosh. Well, I wish Mark would have been with us. I'm sure he had tons and tons of other great information that he could have shared, but I really liked having the conversation with you guys about all of those fun trees that now we all want in all of our
Right.
property.
Right.
We're going to fly through a bunch of the upcoming opportunities. I'm going to attach this list to our email that comes with our newsletter and our meeting recording. Every year, Linda sends this to me. It's the 2023 plant sources for the Mid-Atlantic. These are neonic free, guaranteed places to buy native plants. There are also plant sales. I think it's 3 or 4 pages long. So stay tuned for that. Really excited. Native Hungry Hook Farm is doing garden kits that come with 50 plants for all different growing conditions and a grid for planting your garden. So if you have somebody who's new to this idea and needs, you know, a start from scratch kind of thing, she's got a lot of great options on there. This is the first year she's doing that. Minata Conservancy opened their online plant sale with pickup that you have to choose at the time of payment on May 5th or 6th. So take a look at, they've got a lot of good things. Pollination is now accepting orders, and their deal is 5 of the same species. You pay per plug and shipping cost is included. And I think they changed their rules this year that they're only going to put on their website what is available during a certain time frame. That way they don't get too backlogged and they can send you your stuff based on what's ready for release. So if you've ordered from them in the past, sometimes like they would have plants that you could pay for, but they wouldn't be ready for release until like June or something. So they couldn't send your whole order. So they changed things up a little bit. It's the 2nd annual PA Native Species Day. There's a meeting happening tomorrow about that. If you're interested, there's information on here. The day is May 18th. I did not hear what the species is going to be yet. Maybe that's what they're going to discuss at the meeting. Lots of educational opportunities. Some are free, some are not. Brandywine is hosting a native plant garden, the right fit for your space and interest. Xerces Society, those are both tomorrow. On the 11th, Penn State Extension is doing a second Saturday, planting for pollinators in sun and shade. Bowman's Hill is talking about fireflies. This is a free event. There are 5 parts. They're on session 4 that's going to be happening next Wednesday. Grow Native Masterclass for pondscapes. I think I work this day. I'm really interested in this. I want to put in a little pond, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it or not. And this is a paid, I forget the fee for this one. The Land Ethics Symposium, it's $150 for a full day of courses with speakers. There is a much cheaper student fee if you're a student and want to attend. Jenkins Arboretum does a lot of education. This one seems really neat, the winter clues for tree identification. The State of New Hampshire Invasive Species Coordinator is talking about identifying and removing invasive species. I'm sure they share some of our same problem plants. Susan, too many deer. Master gardeners of, where are we? New.
Or now, so I'm assuming New York, right?
Maybe.
Oh, Northern Virginia, NBA.
Oh, Northern Virginia. I was missing some letters. My banner is hiding it. But this could be, I'm not sure if it's a fee or not.
It looked to me like he's just talking about the need to cull deer, which I completely support, but we already knew that.
Right. This is a 2-day event. The ELA conference, cheaper if you're a member, but they've got a lot of great presentations. Powerful pollinator plants at Jenkins Arboretum. Pollinator best practices. It's a 2-day event through Xerces Society. And ecology of wild edibles.
Ooh.
Yeah, that seems like a neat one. And It's through OSU, I think. I think this one might be a free one. Okay, so,
OSU is usually, yeah, most of theirs are free.
and you can see the recordings off their
They're
website.
really good.
They're really great and very generous in their sharing.
Right.
So next month, we're gonna have Beth Myers talk to us about rain barrels. Susan, can you reach out to her to confirm?
Sure.
Excellent. We're still trying to tie down April's. We were hoping to do actually 2 different presentations in April from Mike, but we're still working on getting those dates figured out. The Lancaster Wildflower Festival is on the 29th. We're doing a plant swap the weekend of May 6th or 7th. It'll be at the Audubon Center in Audubon. And then we're doing native edibles and companion plantings by Ben Kessler in May. So lots of fun stuff coming up. If you ordered plants, watch for an email. We're going to be sending information, your invoice and things as we get those generated.
Yeah, that's going to be a couple days. It's complicated.
Positive.
Shall I just say I will not be doing this again? What
Yeah.
a headache.
It
Some-
took on a life of its own.
Something has to change. Let's put it that way. Something
Yes.
shall change.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank
Oh,
you.
you're welcome. Got to do it since I promised to do it. But like I said,
Never
maybe
again.
the last one. Maybe the last one. That's right.
Okay, so I'm double checking. The chat to see if there's anything that we need to address. Looks like.
It's just one small comment. There's these great lookup sites out there, and some of them are very good at something. Audubon we mentioned. Then there's the native plant finder. That's the only one that has the species count for the host plant that I know of. And then there's one more that I stumbled upon this week called paandflower.org. That's worth a look, and you can actually post photos there, and that's pretty unique.
Cool.
As a member, you can post.
Nice.
Helpful. Thank you, Zach.
I want to copy.
Yep.
Let me see if I can just add that here so I have it. Thank you, Zach, for that. Awesome, guys. Well, I don't have anything else for us tonight. If anybody has anything else they'd like to share.
I have something I'd like to share, Jesse.
Yeah.
Yeah. My name's Bill Felton. And first of all, I want to say what a great meeting, and all this information is so good. You guys are like the go-to place for all things natives here. And I didn't realize you're from Northern Chester County.
I am personally, yes. Our
Yeah.
whole chapter takes a big chunk of Southeastern PA, but yeah,
Right.
I'm not far.
Yeah. So I had an opportunity to go hear Doug Tallamy speak back in October down on the Lower Main Line. And I'm actually from the Phoenixville area. And anyway, I was so, blown away by what he had to say, and felt, it's really important for more people to hear about this and understand it. So I contacted him after that presentation, and we talked about, would it be possible for him to come, to the Northern Chester County, Western Montgomery County area to speak. And he said, sure, let's set it up. So we've tentatively set up May 7th, and I've contacted the Colonial Theater, and they've agreed to host it and provide a theater at no charge. Doug's fee is $3,500. So I've initially sent out requests for pledges to most of the municipalities in this area. particularly ones that host EACs. And in an effort to raise the money to pay Doug, but also to bring more people, to the theater to hear what he has to say. So far I've got a pledge from French and Pickering Trust, which I just got today. And I'm still, waiting to hear from a lot of the municipalities. And I just want to share that with this group. If anybody has any ideas or resources that I maybe should be reaching out to help fund this event. Right now it's sort of tentative. I've got them penciled in and the Colonial Theater's on board. But that's what.
The Brandywine Conservancy,
Okay.
they do a lot of stuff with native plants. Maybe Mount Cuba, I don't know,
Bowman's Hill.
Bowman's Hill,
What was that third one?
Bowman's Hill.
Bowman's Hill.
Yeah.
Bill, have you talked with the nurseries closest to us that would be selling the plants that Doug would be talking about? Things like Bemerwald's, Redbud.
Or possibly the.
Do you know it's nearby?
landscaper.
The who, Audrey? Sorry.
The landscaper from Phoenixville was it? He just did the Philly one for national, the design.
Don
Pell.
Donald Pell. Donald. Is that?
Yeah, Don Pell.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Yeah.
And
Would you
also,
be looking to charge admission, Bill, to kind of offset the cost? I mean, you looking for donations to the entirety for Doug's fee, or just to offset?
Well, so my initial thought was, getting the municipalities to pay for it, of course, that would come from, their budgets and the taxpayer funded event, so that we wouldn't have to charge people to come to it. So there'd be, an incentive to come listen to this, person who's the preeminent expert and really, kind of delivers the message of how urgent this is that we plant natives and the biodiversity and the whole thing. And then of course, groups like this who are really the support and informational resource, particularly this group, Wild Ones. So much information. So that was my thought, Rick, was to not charge at the door. And the way the Colonial Theater does these sorts of things, for groups and for environmental efforts, is if you want to donate at the door, and then that money would go to the theater, to support the Colonial Theater.
Keep the lights on.
The issue with the municipalities and things like that is their budgets got locked down the end of last year, and they might not have flexibility to do that. Just my one thought.
Yeah, and of course, politics is politics too. Not everybody's, on board maybe with the whole native plant movement. However, I feel that, particularly like homeowners associations, like the people who manage, big parcels like that, where there's a lot of common landscaping. These are perfect sites, that could be transformed to meadows, and other, corporate parks, that sort of thing, where the township or municipality would be the conduit to get that information that they're hosting something like this, and get the property managers of these bigger parcels of land out to see, what Doug Tallamy has to say.
Bill, how are you going to advertise it?
Well, again, that would be that was the other advantage to going through the municipality. So then they would have, their resources of contacts within their township to encourage and invite people to come to see this event.
I have a suggestion for you. I
Okay.
belong to Birdtown, and Birdtown is part of a lot of the EACs, probably in your area.
Yeah,
So they have budgets to pay. So they're trying to collaborate with each other so that they can bring in speakers like this.
yeah,
So this is right up their alley. So if you look at birdtownpa.org, and you'll
yeah.
find the different bird towns in your area, and then look for the EACs, and then just call them or write them, however you can get in contact with them, and they'll probably help you out because they're all looking for speakers.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good suggestion. Very good. I know Schuylkill Township has a bird town group.
Well, almost all of Southeastern Pennsylvania does.
Okay.
So you should be good.
Bill, a couple other questions. How many seats does the Colonial Theater have?
Well, the theater that they've committed is 175. But the big theater, I think, is 650.
Oh. And Dan asked, do you have a written proposal for Doug Tallamy's talk at the Colonial?
Well, everything's been on email so far. And once we agreed on the date and so on and so forth, I asked him if he wanted, if he had a contract that he needed to have signed or if he wanted a deposit. And he said an electric handshake is good for him. So,
Bill,
right
are you
now
familiar with Living Landscapes in Phoenixville? They may
oh
have
yeah,
contacts for you.
that's how I kind of got led to Wild Ones.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with that.
Now, here's another idea for you. I may have brought this up at our NCC EAC meeting when you were discussing this. The Chester County Beekeepers Association does have a grant program. I think we may have talked about this, and I reached out to my treasurer, who's a big Doug Tallamy fan, and he said the grant applications weren't open quite yet. So if you reach out to Jessie, and maybe if you email Jessie, she can send me your information. And I could try to keep you in the loop. I think we had emailed in the past, I think. But email Jessie again, give me information and the dates of what's happening, and I'll check with our treasurer, Jack, to see if and when the grant applications do open up. Because I know our past president, big native plant ally, our treasurer's real excited when Doug Tallamy spoke at the West Brandywine Township building right before COVID shut everything down, March 2020. That was a treat. So we're all on board trying to help you get this funded and paid for.
Awesome. Yeah,
and another thought, thank you very much, Justin, because the Montgomery County Beekeepers Association just started a grant program. The application's on the website. And our grant applications are open starting January 1 to, I think we're closing April 1st or something like that. So the timing would work out.
Okay, good, thanks. And what was your name? I see it says George Baylock on your.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
And I actually wrote the policy for the grants application. So this would certainly fall in place with our grants applications.
Great.
We have a
Thanks,
ceiling,
George.
but
and
if you got a couple of grants like that would work.
And if I was to email you, Jessie, is it the email that you send the invitations out for the meetings?
Yep.
Okay.
We could even start a GoFundMe, with all these native plant groups.
That's a great idea, Audrey.
My other thought was reach out to places like Refugia and Redtail and explain to them, hey, I'm trying to spread the word. So homeowners who may want to contact you about services will get the speaker in to inspire them, which could potentially drum up business for you. These larger outfits that are already trying to do native plant centric landscaping work may have part of their budget for advertising, and that could fall under that category.
Good point. And what were their names again? Refugia?
Refugia and Red Tail Restoration, I think, are the two that come to mind. There are probably others, but those two come to mind.
Just make sure you save seats for all of us. Because 175 seats could fill up very quickly.
Our goal could
That's
be
what I'm-
getting to 600.
That would-
Yeah,
that would be
well, you're optimistic like me, Jesse, and so once I have, you know, the commitments from the resources who are going to provide it, then at that point I'm going to have to, you know, say, okay, now, you know, each group who has funded this can invite X number of people.
Right. So that's
know.
my only fear, is that like we're gonna fill up the theater with Doug Tallamy groupies. And it is gonna be a case of just like preaching to the choir. So I think, you know, I fear that the people that you want to hear Doug's message, Bill, will be the ones that have already heard it.
You know, I was at Doug Tallamy lecture probably 5 or 8 years ago, and there were maybe 4 people in the entire auditorium.
Really?
And now it's just amazing. He's just like the guru.
Yeah. Well, this place that I went to, which actually from the Phoenixville group, I somehow got the information, was down at the Bryn Mawr Presbyterian Church. And they have a social justice, or not social justice, a environmental justice committee. So they paid for it, and it was free for anybody, but they got a lot of people showed up. And that's what kind of clicked for me was, you know, they had a lot of municipal workers and homeowner association managers, you know, people who aren't just like us who are, you know, already passionate about it, but people who were just being informed about it. And I think that's, you know, yeah.
We already drank the Kool-Aid.
Right.
Pardon me?
It's the Kool-Aid.
So, well, thank you all for
Definitely the Kool-Aid.
providing these. I've made a bit long list here of some other contacts.
Thank you
Quick
for
question
doing the
for
work.
you. Quick question for you before you go. Who's your contact at the Colonial?
It was Jennifer, the executive director.
Okay, because I have a connection with the Colonial Theater with a couple we know from swing dancing. I'll reach out to Chuck and see if, you know, he can help us be more persuasive when this comes to fruition for a bigger theater press.
She's already it's committed, and the date is firm. They just checked in with me the other day to see how it was going. So that's that. Doug has it penciled in, and the Colonial Theater has the date set aside for us, and they were glad. May 7th is the date that you know, this is all hinging around, which they were real happy about because they like a long lead time. So, you know, like I say, once this is in stone, then they'll start advertising it on their weekly, you know, newsletters and website and so forth.
Very cool.
Awesome.
But that's great. Yeah.
All right, Bill, keep us posted.
Okay. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, sure. All right, guys. What a great meeting. Thank you all for coming and conversing with me about all things Native. And if you need anything, reach out. Otherwise, we will see you next month, and you'll hear from us in between with the newsletter and that Neonic free list, and we'll go from there.
Thank you all for all the hard work.
Thanks,
Thank you.
All the information.
Jesse, thanks very much for stepping in and presenting. You did a great job.
Oh, no problem. I'm
On the
glad everybody
trees.
was talking. That made it much better. We
Yeah,
couldn't
it
make
was
it
fun.
for Marc, but it worked well.
It was fun. We'll have Marc next time.
That's right.
Yeah, anyway, thank you.
All right.
Thanks
guys.
again.
See you.
Bye-bye.